Okay, a little bit about the fuel injection system we have on this car and some of the problems that we're having. I mean, they're not major deal breaker problems, but they are things that need to be addressed. First of all, this is an MSD Atomic LS system, which was designed probably, I don't know, 2011, 2012, was discontinued in 2018, I think. And so by 2019, when I found out about them, they were discontinued and were being sold brand new for very little money, particularly the LS7 models, which is what I ended up buying, which if you go back through the build videos, you'll see how I managed to adapt the LS7 fuel rails to this L77 engine. But that's another story. The shortcomings of this system are that it does not support throttle by wire, and also doesn't support knock sensors, which, you know, I would like to sometime try throttle by wire, but it's not a necessary thing. But I would really like to have knock sensors. That would be pretty handy for running on street gas. But anyway, the problem we're having right now, we're trying to solve, is very low throttle opening, like 3 to 5% throttle position sensor opening, and the car will start to buck and it will go lean right there for some reason. So I found something in the manual that might help us out some. This is the installation instructions. As you can see, this is for an LS7. And this is all the stuff that comes with it. And so we talked a lot about, before we talked a lot about TPS enrichment. So that's the section on TPS enrichment. And we talked about map enrichment. There's a section on that. But one thing we're not doing on this car is speed. So the fuel injection system has no idea what speed the car is going, which could be an issue. And as you can see, they say here on manual transmission equipped vehicles, calibrate speed option, improves drivability when transitioning from high RPM conditions to an idle, which is one of the symptoms that we're seeing when you do that. Like if you come down to a stop sign after driving very quickly and you downshift and basically pop it into neutral right as you're coming to a stop, the RPM will drop dramatically, like way below idle speed, and then come back up. And in that moment, it's kind of in a I don't know, it's if you pulled up to the stop sign, stopped, and went to go fairly quickly, the engine just kind of bogs, and that's when you're in this situation where it could start to buck. So what we have here is I bought my kit from Renegade Hybrids out in Nevada, and I've been looking at their stuff, I mean, since the 90s. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I started this project on, like, this is the fourth car that I've had that I planned on doing this conversion to, and this is the one that finally got done. But this is two halves of a reluctor wheel that go onto the output of the transaxle on the passenger side axle shaft. And this is a bracket that bolts onto the transaxle that mounts a a speed sensor to read this reluctor wheel. Now, I got the car all ready to jack up and everything last night, so I was going to bang this stuff on there and run some quick wires up to the Atomic LS system, but I realized I don't have one of these female connectors, so I kind of put an end to that deal. There's no easy way to connect something to that without hacking this whole thing apart, which I don't want to do. I'm just going to get the right connector and put it on there, and maybe that will bring our problems under control. So just so you understand what we're talking about when we say it's bucking and pogoing or bouncing back and forth or whatever it is, here's a short clip of what we mean from inside the cockpit. See if we can do it here. There you go. That's at 4% throttle opening. It just kind of drives it crazy. It'll just keep doing that. At 5% now, it kind of settled out. Interestingly enough, the air-fuel ratio wasn't really lean that time. Well, it is bouncing up to 15. So it's not. And there it is. It's hunting now. Now it's all settled down. See, it runs great other than that.
And, you know, some people might wonder why I go through all this craziness to do this stuff. I've been doing this for a long time. First time I ever swapped an engine out was in 1979. It's 2023 now. And over those decades, I've seen plenty of instances where people get involved in a car and they take it all apart and they buy tons of parts for it, and the car never goes back together. And so that was all through the 80s, 90s, 2000s that I saw this happening. And then we got into the internet era where there was YouTube and people posting all kinds of good content. But there's still, and I don't know really what happens to all this stuff, but I would assume it follows the same trend as the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And that's, you see people post a video, they're gonna do all this work to this car, they yank the engine out. I'm talking about 944s because they're not easy engine swap cars. And they throw a 5.3 liter or something in there and they get it running, and then you never see any videos of it again. And most of the time, you know, they haven't had the torque tube out, they haven't done anything to the suspension or brakes, and once they get it running, you know, they still don't have the hood on. Most people don't seem to understand that on these cars, the engine comes out the bottom. If you're trying to take it out the top, there's no way you're going to clear the drive shaft that sticks out about 7 or 8 inches from the torque tube before your oil pan runs into the cross member in front. So unless you want to bash things up, the only way to get the thing out is to unbolt the cross member and drop it out the bottom. Yeah, I know, it seems crazy to do it that way, but that's the way it works best, and it just comes out and there's no problems. And there's other YouTube videos, like one I was watching for like 2 years. These guys up in Canada were they did all this stuff to this car. They like bought like millions of dollars worth of parts, and they did crazy stuff like remove everything from the where the fuse box is in this car, which is under the hood in front of the windshield, and mounted the brakes and the clutch there, and put different pedals in it and all this stuff. And again, they did get it running. They got it on the grounds. They took it out for a ride. They didn't even have the hood on it yet or anything, so the car was like not sorted out or anything. And they broke the engine somehow. So yeah, it's a I guess it's not funny, but you know, that's my take on this stuff. So yeah, I started this project. I wanted to do it basically in like 1996, 1997, and I looked into Renegade hybrids, and back then, you know, because they were doing this stuff back then. So they've been doing it for a long time. So by the time I had not done it to the original car that I had, and bought 2 subsequent cars that ended up just getting put back together and made run nice and stuff, and ran all normal and stuff, and sold them rather than doing the engine swap, mainly for economic reasons. I finally got this car in June of 2019, and you know, basically went into it right away. I fixed up a couple things and drove it around a little bit, and then I pulled the engine and sold the engine and did the swap. So that's why, and that's why I do these videos, because to get to the point we're at now, once you've done the swap and you've fixed 90% of the 30-year-old car problems you're going to run into, because you will run into them, then your car is done. Then you have to start sorting it, like tuning it like we're doing now, and making sure your front and rear sway bar are balanced right, your ride height's right, your weight distribution's right, and all that stuff. And then once you're done, then you have a pretty good car. This one is turning out pretty good. It took a lot longer than I thought it would, but we are almost there.